Oh yeah, so a process. Are there any other process questions you asked about? But I don't know. Actually, I think I didn't really answer that. So was there? Are you talking about technical, or are you talking about? So as far as these slides are cracking me up. Sorry. So as far as like, let's say for example, Thalassa. Like my process was to have an image. You know, Miranda, one time at like the middle of the night, I was like flying through New Orleans doing something with Jan Delaney, and she was like, I was like, I only have 2 hours, and she's like, let's go to the museum. And so we kind of like had this fun little like late night excursion here, and I just like had an image. It just sort of appeared in my head. I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. And that's like that sort of seed, you know, I sort of start with a seed, which is that like little burst of an image that's kind of like on the back of your eyes somewhere. And then for me, it's like this sort of hunting that, like you get closer and closer and closer to it until you sort of pull it into reality and you specify the details and you figure out what it really is. And then I thought a lot about you know, the significance of it and also who the portrait would be. There's a lot of different ways that I stumble upon portraits. I work mostly from photographs that I take, and so sometimes I'll just see a moment and I take a picture and that's it, and other times I'll think for a long time about like who embodies this and how and why, and so I have a friend named Naima Penniman, and she and her partner Alexa have worked for a bunch of years. They do a play called Hurricane Season, and it's a play about New Orleans and about Katrina, and they've been touring the country with it for a bunch of years. And she's an amazing performer. She has a super strong spiritual relationship with water, and I just thought, okay, like she seems like a person who makes sense to draw in that way. And she's also kind of stunning, so I'm a sucker for that sometimes, I have to admit. And so I just said like, hey, would you like to you know, work with me on this? And so we just did some stuff where we just you know, took a bunch of time sort of shooting photographs and just thinking about how she could embody that. And then I laid out like sheets of linoleum that were much bigger than my apartment. They were like sort of sprawling onto my floor. And then I just started with charcoal and just started like making this drawing and then refining it. And then I usually draw it out with marker, and then I heat the linoleum with an iron and carve it out. And then print it and then cut it. And you know, I think that like a lot of thinking as a printmaker is a lot about permutations and about starting with a seed of something and then creating 1,000 different variations and letting repetition occur. And when I first started making prints, I remember having this, I was really attracted to it because I liked the idea. I was like, if you're creating your own language, that it felt to me like, you know, in that way that there's kind of syllables that are putting together words, which are putting together sentences and ideas. I felt in this sort of same way about printmaking, that you start by creating these tiny little images, and then you're able to sort of through repetition and rhythm and link them together and just sort of slowly visually create a language. And so that's, you know, like a lot of the pieces that are in, you know, tied into her tentacles, those are a lot of pieces that I would say that with the stuff out there represents like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years of thinking. Like there's definitely elements that have been weaving themselves in and out of my work for a long, long time, and that are just sort of flowing through the whole thought process. And yeah. Cool. Anyone else? Yeah?
How long were you in Haiti, and where did you get your funding from?
Yeah, okay. How long were we in Haiti and where did we get our funding? Funding is a good question. People ask me this one a lot. So the first trip we were in Haiti for 6 weeks, and the second trip we were there for a month. And we got our funding the first time through throwing events, just talking to everyone we knew, friends and family, and being like, hey, if you want to donate anything to this. And then also through creating artwork and selling it. The one thing, you know, I have, it's a kind of an interesting and weird relationship to me, interesting to me, of starting out and feeling, you know, making work which is so much about not being an object and about being a moment and about being part of these spaces. And then I have also slowly kind of diverged on this path, which is that I'm creating these artworks that are actually like kind of heinously expensive. And that's something that just by letting my work sort of enter into the art market has heinously expensive to me from sort of my perspective of like nuts and bolts and everyone just sort of like eking out their existence. I feel like letting my work sort of enter into the art market, it has really like diverged and taken this path where it's in a kind of a realm that I have really little understanding of. But the thing that has been really positive for me about that is that I'm able to, through selling artwork, fund an idea very quickly, that I'm not always going through grant writing channels and sort of like coming up to a lot of the obstacles that I think I would come up with if I didn't have the freedom of being able to sell artwork to fund projects. And so a lot of the projects that you see where I'm like, you know, building giant rafts or doing things that are like deceptively expensive and trying to help all of us kind of survive while we're doing it, a lot of that has come from having artwork that has entered the art market. Yeah. Is there any one place I would love to travel that I have yet to visit? Oh, that's a really good question. Hold on, let me think. Well, I'm about to go to Brazil actually, and I've never been there, and I'm really excited to try and learn about São Paulo. And you know, one of the trains of thought in my work has always been about how we make cities and how we live in them, and so I want to try and develop a project in São Paulo, which is like about creating kind of mobile units that can be really like awesome and beautiful and also functional for people. And so maybe that's an easy answer, but yeah, I would say Brazil is like that. I'm lucky enough to also be going there soon. Yeah.
Before you enter the marketplace with your artwork, how does a street artist survive?
Did everyone hear that? How does a street artist survive before you enter the marketplace? Waitressing. I waitressed for 6 years. My first job was at a Friendly's in Florida. I was serving ice cream. And then I moved to New York and I worked at like every single restaurant in Park Slope through college, and until I didn't have to anymore. And it was like one of those, you know, and then I would like sell artwork out of my studio for a long time. You know, I think I just sort of pieced it together like everyone does. Yeah.
What was the process in having your art to see this marketable?
Mm-hmm.
You start with having little outside sales,
Mm-hmm.
to the gallery. What was the process?
Yeah, so the process of my work being sort of for sale, I think honestly it started with this one woman who's a friend of mine who just knew my work and was like, hey, I want you to make an installation for me. And then sort of slowly, like one friend of hers would come in and be like, what is that? And then the next friend and the next friend. And so I lived for about a year on people's friends seeing their artwork and being like, where did you get that? And then being like, come, I'd like bring them over and be like, so this is that. And honestly, I felt there was like a weird pressurized thing of like me standing in my tiny, hot, like extremely messy room with all this art and then being like, oh God, I have to help you. So they would like buy something. But yeah, so that was the process. And then I had been working for a while when there's this gallerist, or who's no longer a gallerist, in New York City named Jeffrey Deitch, and he is just this kind of like wild, crazy character who had this gallery which was very much about creating like giant immersive kind of events and spectacles and sort of just pushing what people could do with art in a commercial gallery setting. And so he asked me to do a project, and I agreed and really started my thinking process for installation making, which was a thought I'd had for a long time but hadn't ever had the sort of space or resources or really sort of like go to get going on it. Not that you need to have space or resources, you know, you can of course always just find a building and go, like, but so they also started setting prices for me, and it was really shocking for me at first. You know, they would like declare a price and I'd be like, oh my God, like, are you serious? I've been stepping on this on my studio floor for 3 months, like, how can you ask that for it? And like, in feeling like I could never pay that amount of money, no one else I know could, like, a lot of guilt, a lot of strangeness. I mean, I think probably everyone who's an artist like understands that process, that it's really like, there's just a lot. I don't think that I know like a good answer. I don't think that I just feel like I'm trying to just navigate this kind of hurricane and just like take the best path I can. I don't think I've like found anything perfect or awesome or like really idealistic or anything like that. I'm just kind of figuring it out. You had a